44 immense pairs of them, most of them more than 10 feet tall. In accordance with local custom, and for security as well, all of them must be closed and latched each night and opened each morning. Those on the ground floor are secured with a heavy steel bar lifted and fitted into slots on each side of the window opening. For Carl or me, it would be a 30-minute task every morning and night. Silvana or Giacomo can do it in 20. Carl and I refer to it all as the balcony ceremony. We quickly come to accept it as part of the rhythm of villa life. Even quicker, however, is Carl's decision, taken the previous October when we first arrived together as the new owners of Villa Cornaro, that the whole process should be delegated to Giacomo and Silvana in their moonlighting role as custodians of the property. On my own now, in my first spring at the villa, I soon discover the true benefit of the arrangement. Silvana's morning visits are my gateway to the world of Piombino Dese. She brings me news of the village, listens attentively to my carefully prepared, yet nonetheless stumbling forays into Italian conversation, and generally presents me a role model for a donna in Venetan life. Silvana never loses patience or laughs at my malapropisms. She speaks with slow precision, repeating phrases as often as necessary, rearranging them as bits of a puzzle until the meaning is apparent even to an American novice. My 6 months of lessons back in Atlanta with Lola Butler, an effervescent military bride from Padua, has drilled me in the basics of Italian grammar. But my brain is not prepared to process a non-stop stream of animated Italian, especially when the conversation turns to septic tanks, sewers, spigots, drains, and other topics that never arose in my dialogues with Lola, but grow to fill my life in Piombino Dese. A pizza party will be a baptism of fire. 8 cars have arrived ahead of us when we pull into the parking lot at Pizzeria Sombrero that evening, and several others follow. I'm in the dark about the guest list for this outing, but I notice that all those climbing out of the automobiles are women. Each is immaculately dressed in tall heels and a smart suit. Many have bright scarves tossed elegantly across their shoulders with that infuriating insouciance I envy so. We enter a brightly lighted room and take seats at a single long table stretching from one end to the other. About 40 women are present, at least 35 of them complete strangers to me, and all are chattering rapidly in high spirits. Silvana lifts her voice to tell me above the din that the women in town want to welcome me to Piombino Dese with a pizza party. They are afraid I may be lonely at the villa by myself. I am afloat in a sea of introductions and mellifluous Italian names. Lucia, Chiara, Emanuela, Pierina, Fiorella, Flora, Elena, Nadia, Enza, Maria Rosa, Luigina, Francesca. Beer is flowing. Pizzas with micro-thin crusts follow in infinite variety. I lose count of the pizzas, just as I have already lost track of the names. Perhaps I lose track of the beer as well. But most improbably, I lose my self-consciousness about speaking Italian. My grammar is no better. My vocabulary is no larger, but among friends, what do such things matter? As I wake the next morning, alone in the huge villa, in pitch black because of the tightly closed balcony, my head slightly disoriented from too much beer, I smile with the realization that I have a new home among the women of Piombino Dese. As I settle into the pace of Piombino Dese, I sometimes wonder, sitting on the south portico in the evening with a glass of Prosecco, how I ever managed, with the simplicity of only one life, one circle of friends, one language. And I ponder how easily and quickly chance can divert the whole stream of one's life. Whatever brought you to buy a Palladian villa in Italy? It is a question Carl and I never escape. Our Atlanta friends ask, tourists and tour guides ask, occasional magazine writers and television interviewers ask, and from time to time in these quiet moments we ask ourselves. Carl has developed a simple response. It was a full moon. I always answer with the longer version, but sometimes I think that I am only telling how it happened, and that I am still searching for the why myself. In the spring of 1987, I decided that a well-ordered Atlanta family such as ours should have a second home in upstate New Hampshire or possibly Vermont. Although my mother was from Oklahoma and my father from Edinburgh, Scotland, I grew up in Littleton in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, where my father was a doctor. Since Carl seemed to be weaning himself from working all 7 days of the week, I felt the time was ripe for a country retreat, a place where we might, in Thoreau's phrase, live deliberately. 2 of our children were in college, and the youngest was in high school. I was cheerfully making full-time work of my part-time post as music director of a small church near our home in Atlanta, the result of returning to school for a master's degree in sacred music. Ashley, Carl, and Jim applauded their mother's return to academia and found her exam time anxiety to be a special treat. Still, my plate was not filled. I determined that a vacation house would be a lodestone to draw the family together regularly and to retain familial, or at least friendly, ties through coming decades. Like our black Labrador Cleo with a new rawhide bone, I seized the idea and began gnawing away at it. Visions sprouted in my head. A 2-story clapboard cottage on Sugar Hill, or a stone house along the banks of the Gale River, its entranceway a spider's web of climbing yellow roses. The dreams were vivid in color, scent, and sound, and particular to my native White Mountains. I convinced myself that New Hampshire is easily accessible from Atlanta. A 2.5-hour flight to Boston, a quick stop at the car rental counter, and then, with me driving instead of Pokey Carl, just 2 more hours to our country retreat. Carl was non-committal when I floated the idea, which I took to mean yes. All that remained was for me to find at a bargain price the spot that I had conjured in my mind. That is my reason one Sunday afternoon in late April 1987, as I sit in our Atlanta living room, surrounded by a sea of Brobdingnagian newspapers, for pulling out the Sunday magazine of the New York Times. I have chosen a bad week for New England summer homes, however. Not a single one is listed. In the midst of my disappointment, my eye stops at an unusually unattractive ad from a Greenwich, Connecticut realtor for a villa in the Veneto region of Italy, a villa allegedly designed by Andrea Palladio, the most influential figure in the history of Western architecture. Frankly, the whole thing seems implausible, but an interesting coincidence nonetheless. The coincidence lies in the fact that Carl and I had made plans several months earlier for a July visit to the Palladian villas in the Veneto. Our friends from London, Judith and Harold, are to meet us there. With a "ha!" I show the ad to Carl and tell him that if I don't find the right spot in New England, we can always settle for our own Palladian villa. Carl reacts with a disturbing amount of interest. He pulls from our bookshelves the copy of Michelangelo Muraro's Venetian villas that we purchased several years earlier following a 3-week family vacation in Florence with a quick side trip to Venice. There is Villa Cornaro staring back at us in full color. Villa Cornaro, we discover, is not just a Palladian villa. Of the 18 surviving villas designed by Palladio, it is one of the 5 largest, best preserved, and most influential in later architecture. "But, Sally, it's enormous," Judith complains 2 months later, after the 4 of us have climbed from our small, unair-conditioned rental car parked in Piazzetta Sguizzato to stare dumbstruck at first across the street at Villa Cornaro. The villa looms above the ancient wall that surrounds it and above Via Roma as well, placid and mysterious as the Sphinx, completely detached from the petty bustle of Piombino Dese on a scorching July day. "Enormous," Judith repeats to emphasize her point. "Beautiful, yes, but very, very big." Her Israeli accent flavors her words and adds to their authority. "Mammoth, Carl. You'd need roller skates to get from one end to the other." Harold's grin suggests that he would be happy to don the skates. It's a palace, I say to myself. Carl keeps his thoughts to himself also. The gate to the villa is ajar, so we enter to see an elderly couple awaiting us on the north portico. Epifanio Marulli, a gray-haired gentleman with surprisingly bright blue eyes, was custodian of the villa long before Dick Rush, the current owner, arrived on the scene 18 years